everybody. Welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast. My name's James Dickson. I'm wishing you all a very good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, whenever or wherever you tune into the podcast from. On today's podcast, we welcome Joss Ford. Joss is the CEO of Enviral and is on the show today to kick off the discussion about sustainability within festivals, but more specifically about the way that festivals and events communicate their own messages of sustainability to their own customers. Joss, welcome along to the show.
Thank you very much. How are you getting on?
Not too bad at all. I suppose before we really look at the subject today, we should really put into context what you guys do as a business, as an organisation. So first of all, let's start by telling us a little bit about Enviral.
Yeah, cool. Well, firstly, just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, James. Enviral is a brand marketing and social media agency based out of Bristol in the UK, and we basically help organisations tell their social and environmental stories. We specialise in social media communications, and we help brands kind of really understand and evolve their company purpose. Mm-hmm. And although we're kind of a small young agency, we have quite a large network and span various different industries. Kind of at the moment we've got a specific focus in the drinks world and in the kind of fashion world. But my personal background has been in events. I used to do brand management at music festivals for an energy drink, which is known for giving people wings. I ran the marketing for a hospitality company out in the French Alps of all places for a few years, sure. Which also had a small music venue. I co-run a club night in London. At the moment, we don't actually work directly with festivals, but we're keeping a really close eye on the festival world and the events world in general. Mm-hmm. We're just trying to kind of dissect how their operations and communications can have a truly positive impact on individuals, businesses, and other industries in general. Hopefully we're going to talk all things sustainability, marketing, and communications. I've got to ask my favourite topic right now, which I always ask around a pub table. But James, what is your favourite festival, and what was your favourite festival experience, and why?
Okay, my favourite festival experience was probably... I'll tell you what it was. Okay, I'm going to be honest about this. It was my most recent festival experience.
Okay, what was that?
And it was Carfest last year.
Nice.
Simply because I have a wife, I have two young sons who are 15 and 12 years old, and I just felt that as an event, it's pitched as a family event.
Yeah.
It's something that you go along to with the kids, and there is something for everybody. And it genuinely delivered on everything that it said it was going to deliver on.
Yeah, I think Chris Evans is a big advocate for that, isn't he? Like, just really pushing.
Advocate, yeah, but I think, as something, you hear the words family friendly can strike fear into the hearts of parents. And anything that's billed as family friendly, you enter into with a little bit of sometimes cynicism, sometimes trepidation.
Yeah.
But if something, when something actually delivers on what it said it's going to deliver on, which it did, I have to say, you come away with a better experience than the one that you could have hoped for. And so as a festival experience, that was great for me. I have a number of highlights where I've been lucky enough to see some certain bands and see certain things take place at certain festivals. But as an overall experience, that's the most recent one, and that's the one that I would reference in answer to that question.
Nice. Yeah, I think the reason why I say that is just, when you are at a music festival specifically, and events in general, but music festivals specifically, I think that when you're like truly relaxed, when you're truly feeling inspired and creative, is when you really have those lasting memories. And on that kind of basis, I think festivals and festival organisers in general have the opportunity to really get the ear and attention of people. And if they can do that for positive good, then, as an industry, it can really affect individuals on the kind of 360 other days of the year.
Yeah.
And although you might be, 8 cans of warm cider deep in a muddy English field, it can actually completely change your mindset, and that's why we're really interested with the music festival space. You know, I'm a festival goer myself, and our team are big into kind of getting out of the office and having that as the kind of let the hair down. Sure. But you know, then relating that back to actual positive impact, it can be really interesting.
Yeah, and when we're moving onto the idea of communicating sustainability and communicating what any given festival or event is doing in order to make themselves sustainable and greener and environmentally friendly, and all of these sort of buzzwords, to be sort of cynical for a second, they a lot of them have become buzzwords within the industry, and that very much leads us on to something that we're going to be talking about today, which is that it's fair to say that most events, festivals, call it what you will have one eye on sustainability now. They will want to watch their single-use plastic bottles. Yeah. They will want to watch how much litter is being left there, how they are cleaning up any sort of particular greenfield site. So they will have a number of green or sustainability boxes that they want to tick, which they understand are important to do so. But they also understand, I suppose, that customers are placing a really big focus on there now. Consumers are demanding, and they demand a certain standard. They demand certain boxes be ticked by these organisers. And one of the things that we want to talk to you about today, Joss, is how an event communicates what they are doing by way of sustainability to their customers without making it look like they are simply doing it as a political box ticking exercise. Because consumers, I think we need to recognise that they are quite savvy nowadays, aren't they? They can see through not dishonest marketing, but what may be the word?
Well, I mean, it is greenwash, and like, if I think the best example at the moment is obviously getting quite a lot of hype at the moment is the old Fire Festival story, which, right, this is who we are, this is what we do on a daily basis, this is what we believe, this is our purpose, and you can live this lifestyle as well. And they get everybody behind it through, let's be honest, some amazing marketing, spanning from great video to the use of modern influencer marketing on social media. But they weren't being able to deliver it. And as soon as they go and say they're going to do all of these things and they don't do it, let's look at the backlash that happens, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, that's a pretty extreme case.
It is, and when you're being mocked in the opening speech of the Oscars for your food offering, you know that you've dropped ball massively.
Exactly. But then, you know, if you kind of dig deep into maybe smaller events, different festivals, and they say they're going to do it, but they could mask it quite easily, then, you know, who is really kind of demonstrating that it's actually happening? And that's where I think it's where the industry in general is kind of perhaps lacking. And unfortunately, there are some brilliant festivals out there which are completely pioneering the way, saying, like, this is what we do, this is how much waste we've used, this is what we're doing about it, this is the progress we're making year on year. And then they're communicating it out to festival goers and traders as well. And if they do that, then, you know, both festival goers and traders can demand that from the other events that they go to. And that's where I think, you know, in all industries, when brands, they do pioneer the nature of sustainability, it has to lift the competition around them. And, you know, you look at it as competitive advantage, and that's why sustainability and marketing kind of works. Because, you know, you're doing this, you're getting a lot of attention for it, people are wanting to interact with your brand, and they're wanting to spend more to interact with that brand. But the great thing is that because they're doing that, the other competitors have to raise their standards, and that's great. You know, it's great to see that, and it's great to also see that there's governing bodies who are demanding that through the whole industry now.
Just picking up on a point that you made when you were referencing the extreme circumstance of a Fire Festival, and the idea that if you say you're going to do something, you have to do it, because if you don't, that's going to have a massive backlash on you, and that is the absolute extreme. But when it comes to sustainability, a lot of the processes and a lot of the methods and practices that events and festivals will put into place will often actually go unseen by their customers when it comes to sustainability. So that's where it's key for them to really have the right strategy to communicate what they've done, because often the good work and what they've drawn up as a strategy will be completely unseen by their customers.
And that's it. And I think, if we fold back kind of 20, 30 years, and we look at global warming and sustainability in general, it's had a really bad brand image, right? It's, it was kind of 70s academics and the smelly hippies who were advocating, like guys, like this is one planet and we've got to look after it. And the middle ground wasn't really infused by that, because it's, you've got like real kind of scientific kind of communications going out, which, let's be honest, a lot of people don't read. And then you've got this kind of more hippie, let's completely not use anything and let's kind of just eat flowers and make sure that the footprint on this planet from individuals doesn't happen at all. But in the modern world that we're in, that both of those don't really connect. And this is a kind of space where I think festivals have had to be quite careful about. And the nature of festivals is often kind of like freedom and love and peace, and sometimes if you're going to communicate a serious issue, that's quite hard to communicate within that brand, but now with creativity and being dominating on visual platforms like Instagram and in video, and it's got to be creative and to get the ear of people and the eye of people. That's where I see a lot of festivals benefiting. And so what I mean by that is using clever video, using infographics, using influencers to spread a true word. And if you can get festivals to get multiple stakeholders on board, let's look at Shambhala, for example. They make traders have to go through a level of kind of qualification that, they are a vegetarian festival. They're doing that for ethical reasons, and they're doing it for the environment. They make traders go through a day course where they not only educate them about what the values of the sustainability values of the festival are, but how they, as businesses, can be better. And I think that's really, really interesting. And off the back of the communication side of things, you've then got all of these traders around a festival being your word. They are communicating your values physically, one-on-one, as well as the videos, the sections within websites, which are there to show that they are doing it. Because if it's online now, it's not going anywhere. Like if you say that you're going to do it and you put it on a website, you've got to live up to that hype. But then, on the drop down levels, you've got all of these aspects of getting people to go and spread the word verbally. And I think that's really where we, as a company, Enviral, really kind of understand what both brands and consumers really want and how they can merge and how they can communicate well, is that word of mouth is king, right? And if you can tell a story, stories get the attention of people. And if you can tell a story, those stories can be retold by people. And digitally, you just got the one button, hit share, and then suddenly, as if you've got a load of people hitting share, you've got that opportunity for that kind of mini virality factor. And that's where a message can really be spread really well. And that's why I see there's some organizations who are doing it really, really well. There are organizations, on the other hand, who also need to step up their game.
Absolutely. Do you think that the subject of sustainability within the festival industry changed and went through what I suppose would be peaks and troughs due to the change in demographic of audiences? Because when you talk about, and to put this in the sort of the most politically correct way, the older style festival goer from 30, 40 years ago, the hippie, peace and love, the type of people that you would associate 30 or 40 years ago with going to a music festival in a field for 3 days. You know, in 15 years ago, that changed massively, didn't it?
Yeah.
Demographic changed. They became more corporate. They became more accessible to people who may not have considered going to a greenfield location for 3 days to watch their favorite bands. And as that demographic changed, so did the attitude towards sustainability from the event organizers themselves. And they've perhaps had to play catch up and reflect back on what may have been a few years where they really did take their eye off the ball.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, if you look at demographics and the kind of the demanding nature of specific demographics to want to interact with brands who are doing good for people and the planet, then yeah, you've got millions of stats out there saying that millennials and Gen Z, they demand it from brands and they want to interlink with brands. But I would say that realistically, there's been a level of common sense that's also kind of unraveled. And yes, people are demanding it, but a festival is a business which needs to run for a long amount of time to make money. And if you're going to not do things in a way which people are going to question that they're going to an event and it's actually kind of just great because we've got great music, we've got great lineups, we've got great experiences, but just look at the amount of plastic cups that were in that field at the end, or look at the amount of cars that are parked in a car park outside the festival gates.
Sure.
You're going to start having this mindset change, being like, well, actually, do I want to interact with that festival? And that's why, you have these pioneering festivals who are really pushing for it, who are making everyone step up the game. But, from a common sense perspective, let's look at it. Car sharing, great for the planet, but why would you want to go in 4 different cars if you've got your 4 mates who you're camping with, right? And by increasing car park prices, by promoting a cheaper alternative to go on the likes of Big Green Bus in the UK, by promoting the fact that 80% of music festivals' carbon emissions from the 4 days are in the travel often to certain locations. And we've got to kind of be aware that for a great festival to happen, often it is in the depths of the countryside or in unique locations. And for those unique locations to exist, sometimes they are in the middle of nowhere. But it's people are paying kind of £200 to go to festivals. For them to all drive in separate vehicles, it can be pretty expensive, right?
Yeah.
There is that common sense level that's come into it, which is just okay, well, let's promote that you should be using an alternative kind of mode of transport, or making sure that don't chuck your tent away at the end of the festival because you might have another event this summer, even if it's kind of covered in glitter and pretty muddy. Don't chuck it away because actually tents cost quite a lot of money, and do you really want to spend that money again in 3 weeks' time to go to your next event?
Sure.
And by actually promoting that and showing that it's a common sense perspective, you can often be maybe I will just pack my tent down this time, or maybe I will just start a WhatsApp group with some people to join forces to drive to an event, and that's pretty cool. So I think that level of common sense is also part of the demanding aspect.
Sure. How would you address or work with a festival if with all that you've just said there, and I agree with much of what you've said, but then there's also the argument that they're perhaps trying to have it both ways. They want people to come to camp for 4 nights in a field somewhere. They're going to need a tent, they're going to need a sleeping bag, they're going to need clothes 4 days. They're going to need various types of clothes if they're going to a greenfield festival in the middle of the UK in summer, because the weather can be so unpredictable. At that point, then it becomes very difficult to carry all of that stuff on a bus or a train, or put it in a taxi. So they're wanting people to turn up and buy tickets for their festival and pay £200 to camp for the weekend, but then try and say to them, we want you to do all of that, but would you mind coming on the bus with it? that there is that paradox between what they're asking people to do and what realistically people need to do to be able to come to that event? And do we think that the ideas need to be worked on as to how that could happen, and a bit more joined up thinking between those two elements?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, from a personal perspective, I think that, rightly or wrongly, last summer was a pretty amazing summer in the UK, right? So much sunshine. For me, I'd rather go to a greenfield festival in the UK than fly abroad to a beach resort or whatever. And, you know, if that's going to be your holiday for the summertime, then brilliant. What I would say from how we would kind of look to go and kind of maybe work with the festival world to really raise that awareness, it goes back to that point that I made at the start, where you actually really have the ability to get the ear of people when they are standing in front of the pyramid stage. They're relaxed, they're in the sunshine, and you can then say a pretty serious message through a clever piece of communications, which can actually knock on effect outside of the festival grounds. And we are humans. We don't like to be told what to kind of do, but if it's portrayed to you in the right way, you can really have that long standing impact. And I would say that yes, festivals have got problems, like in terms of they've got that paradox between, you're asking people to come to something, but then you're saying that you're the most eco brand in the country. But so do businesses, and everything has got an impact.
Yeah.
And I think that if we merge what we do for our clients at the moment, we do a lot of social media communications, talking about pretty serious things, but in a quite lighthearted and fun way. Now, people who come back from work and they're sitting in front of TV and they're kind of scrolling the endless feed on social media, they aren't there to be sold to or preached to about, let's be frank, quite serious problems. They need to be engaged in a much more creative and digestible way. And it's the exact same thing with festivals, right? I would say that Boomtown last year, which I attended, they hit the nail on the head in terms of communications within festival grounds. Where on the Sunday night, in the mass grand finale of the event, I'm not sure if you've been to Boomtown yourself, but the production is pretty amazing. And kind of all bells and whistles production. And throughout the whole festival ground, they had a finale, a unified finale, which is a kind of 15-minute video performance, lighting performance, music performance. And basically, what they did is they went through this story, they went through this journey, and at the crux, they talked about how many tents were left the year before, how much waste they used that year. And then they announced the theme of what's this year's festival, which is around future cities and sustainable cities and how the world basically very quickly needs to change. Mm-hmm. And they did that in such a creative form that, I mean, as a creative myself, I was like, wow, they've really ticked all boxes here.
Sure.
But before any festival can talk about sustainability, they've really got to show that they're taking it seriously. And there are a range of different organizations out there, from consultants to organizations that offer pledges. Powerful Thinking, based in Bristol, that they've got the Festival Vision 2025 pledge, and that was based off the back of the 2015 Paris climate talks, and a lot of festival goers and actually a lot of event producers aren't going to have gone into the depths of what that climate talk was. They're not going to know what an IPCC report necessarily is. But this pledge, it advocates for festivals to basically say that they're going to do something, and they give them various tools to help them at least start the journey of the traceability of how much energy and waste and water that they're using, to give them tips in how to reduce, say, their single-use plastic. And then you've kind of got organizations which are more kind of consultants who work on a one-on-one basis with festivals to advise them beforehand, and then look at doing reports post-event as well. And I'm a massive believer that there's no point in saying something until you really are sure that it's going to happen, right? So let's look at Fire Festival again. They've gone out there, they've said, this is what's going to happen. They've had a great salesman who said that it's going to be, you know, the world's best event. And then they couldn't deliver on it. Now, the backlash of that has been, you know, it's been the worst thing possible for any event, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to do this in an events perspective, like no matter if you've been putting recycling bins out for the last 10 years at your events, no matter if you are looking at the 5 R's, which is and promoting and advocating this 5 R's nature, which is refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and then ROT. ROT stands for composting. No matter if you're doing all of these elements without actually having a level of measurement, I think that it's really hard to get the ear of people to say that you're actually taking it seriously. And in the nature of promotion, which often happens through social media, it can just be a series of comments underneath you saying, right, we cut our waste by X this year. Great. What else did you do? You know, like, I saw that you were still generating various stages of diesel. Like, that comment there suddenly eliminates what you're talking about over here. And without having a rounded plan, which is done through professionals, you can't necessarily do communications in the best way. And this is something that we work with clients with quite often, is kind of scenario planning to make sure that if you say you're going to do something, you actually are doing it. And if you're not doing it, well, let's not communicate it just yet. Let's work with you so that you do that. And then let's talk about it in creative forms. But yeah, I mean, video is powerful right now for us. I would say that documenting events, the behind the scenes events, people aren't going to be seeing the solar grids, which are in a different field because it takes up space within a festival. They aren't going to see the efforts that you're doing before and after events to clean up the events. But by documenting it in video, suddenly you've got a narrative to be able to show people that you're actually doing it. And then having a platform within a website or like a media hub, which people can find out more, is what I would recommend is the next step that people who really want to take events seriously from a sustainability perspective do. But yeah, well, I mean, what's your opinion on it? Have you
I think that to sort of put it in a nutshell, if you can call it that, there was a huge turning point and an obvious reference in David Attenborough's Blue Planet. It took 30 seconds of footage of plastic floating in the ocean to really kickstart a massive debate. It was like something that people knew was there, but it just took that 30 seconds of footage in that one program being seen by millions and millions of people that suddenly opened the discussion floodgates, and people realized exactly what was happening. And I saw that as a turning point. It might seem like a bit of a cliche to reference that, but it was an obvious turning point because it was so simple and it got to so many people so quickly. And it does seem to me that there's been more coverage about that topic in the media since that one bit of footage and that one program was aired, and you had that one noted and well thought of and respected advocate for that way of thinking and that we need to change. And just using that then and tying that in with what you were saying about video, about capturing things like that. You think about the infrastructure of production that is at every festival now. I don't know a single festival, big, small, medium, whatever, that doesn't have some sort of video screen there, some sort of screen that's showing messages, showing live camera footage, showing graphics that are part of the band's production package. They have the means to communicate visual messages to people en masse to huge audiences.
Yeah.
They have those captive audiences in fields, in venues, wherever they may be. And I agree with you completely. Why not
Oh,
document it?
sure.
Document it,
Yeah.
put it up there. You've got the means to convey it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've kind of got, you've got Glastonbury that's been doing it for years. You've got festivals all around the world that have been doing it for years. And there's been greenfields at festivals for yeah, I mean, ever since I've started going to festivals, I'm pretty young, but like, you've got people who have been doing talks on sustainability. Now you've got the opportunity to really engage people through that creative sense. I've been to countless festivals where they're now kind of implementing, and not just festivals, events in general, where they're using VR to have that real experiential aspect. Actually, I'm pretty sure last year at Glastonbury, they even had a David Attenborough experience, which is through VR that you were just mentioning. But yeah, there's a stat which was from the guys at Powerful Thinking, and they are teamed up with an organisation called Julie's Bicycle, I think based in London, and they've basically they did various reporting, and they said that you know, nearly 50%, or I think 50% of people on the dot said that they would pay more in a increased ticket price to reduce the kind of festival's environmental impact. Mm-hmm. Now that's great, and I absolutely love that, and that's getting data, raw data from people at events, and probably through a multitude of different events as well. And off the back of that, they also did a stat which said that 43% of those audiences said that they would have changed their behaviour as a result of green initiatives that have been perhaps discovered at festivals. Yeah. And that merge is really, really awesome for me to see. Like it's now figuring out how that those green initiatives can be even more advanced and more kind of grown upon year on year. We've obviously talked about video in there, but before you talk about just making a video, that video has got to be in a way which projects the message in the best possible way. And so it can really mirror, we focus quite heavily on video production at Enviral, and we go into every video campaign and production that we do thinking about the end result on social media and figuring out that feeling before we even start the planning phase, because people's attention spans are exceptionally short, and they're getting shorter. And as I say, if you've got a festival, you've got people standing in a field watching videos or seeing signs or listening to people speak. They've got to be really engaging for them to give them attention, because there's so many things going on at festivals. You know, still, fortunately, a lot of festivals you can't get social media to scroll through, which is what happens in different events when people shut off, or while you're watching on TV. You can simply just scroll past. But I'd love to see festivals using artists more to show their principles. Like, influencer marketing works. We all know this, and it's actually been working for years and years and years, but it's really got into the spotlight as a core marketing route for brands. But if you've got a headliner who, in their contract to play a certain festival, their contract stated that they had to carbon offset their travel, they were to look at how many flights, journeys they took throughout their touring year, and the festival gave them a route to carbon offset. They had a load of information on why festivals use home compostable cups. They actually, I'm not sure if you know much about composting, because it's quite a big thing at the moment. I don't want to tangent too much, but the difference between home composting and industrial composting is very, very different, and it's very, very confused. But basically, if you have something that says that it's compostable, a lot of the time it's industrial compostable, and in the UK, the nearest industrial composter is in Germany, for example. So right. That's not that great, right? You can't just chuck it in a hedge and it's going to degrade in 8 months. Home compostable, you can do that.
Yeah.
And that difference there, people don't know about that. So imagine if you had a headliner of a festival who was filmed even at the event, you can turn around videos very, very quickly, filmed at an event being like, this is a home compostable cup, this is a industrial compostable item. You probably don't know the difference to this, because I didn't, 10 minutes ago, until the festival actually educated me on this. They had a specific team educating influencers and festival goers on sustainability, a really consumable and easy and digestible way. Filmed that, and they played that before the gig that everybody's waiting for them to see, because everybody in that audience are there to see that specific person. They're fans of those people. And if they suddenly came just 10 minutes before the event, and Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters pops up and says this really fun, quirky way, because often most of high-level musicians and entertainers are media trained, they'd be able to do it in a really kind of conversational style. It's not too preachy, and suddenly you actually got the ear of people. And as I've said a few times in this podcast, outside of the festival grounds is really where it matters, in my opinion. And that's where you can really inspire people for change. But for festivals in general, because I know there's event organisers who listen to this podcast in majority, definitely checking out the likes of Julie's Bicycle and the Festival Vision 2025. I'd say that is probably the best place to start. Once you have that, once you really have a team who gets the reasons why you're taking sustainability seriously, then you can start talking about how you're going to communicate it in a creative way.
We've been talking on today's podcast to Joss Ford. Joss is the CEO of Enviral, a comms agency based in Bristol, about the subject of sustainability, but particularly how the message of sustainability is communicated by festivals to their own audiences, and what they could be doing, what they should be doing, what they have done, and various topics to talk about as a result of today's podcast, I'm sure. Joss, if any of our followers want to get in touch directly with you guys, I know you've referenced a couple of other organisations that could offer some support and guidance on this, but if they want to speak to you directly, how do people find Enviral?
Yeah, so I mean, we're all over the shop because we're a social media agency. So you can certainly find us on Facebook and on Instagram. It's go_enviral. But probably the best place to find us is just heading over to our website at enviral.co.uk. And yeah, we're really wanting to just speak and understand the events world in general. So I'd absolutely love some contact from anybody who listens to this podcast. You can email me directly at joss@enviral.co.uk. And I'd love to kind of know more about any concerns that event organizers have in their communication strategies when it comes to sustainability. Mm-hmm. And yeah, bounce some ideas, absolutely. I think that would be an awesome thing to have at the end of this, actually, to be fair.
Been fascinating, and I think just looking ahead, we're now sitting right at the end of February when we're recording today's podcast. Likely that it will be published some point in early March, but what would be great is maybe later on in the year, at the end of the 2019 festival season, if we can call it that, maybe look at some of the examples. It would be great to maybe look at some examples of what people are doing later on this year, and see how things are changing, year to year within the industry. Joss, thanks very much for joining the podcast today. It's been great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, James. Really appreciate it.
If you're watching the video version of this podcast on eventindustrynews.com, don't forget to head over to your favorite podcast platform. All of the podcasts are available as audio downloads, so you can reference back for months and months and listen back to some of the previous episodes that we've done. If you are listening to this as the audio version of the podcast, head over to eventindustrynews.com, where you can watch videos of all our podcasts and see for yourselves the guests that we've got on here and on the show. But for now, we're going to wrap up today's episode. Thanks once again to Joss Ford from Enviral. My name's James Dickson. We'll see you on the next episode of the Event Industry News podcast. Goodbye.